if you want to learn JavaFX and you want to learn desktop development in Java and you want to learn it quickly and in a fun and interactive way, well, you've come to the right place. If you give me just 15, maybe 20 minutes of your time, and it's half that if you'll watch this video on 2x speed, I'm going to make you very, very dangerous with this JavaFX tooling. I've always believed that a project should drive the learning, which is exactly why we're going to create a little application in this JavaFX tutorial. We're going to create a fun little number guessing game. It's going to be simple, but it's also going to be pretty cool when we're finished with it. And in so doing, it's going to allow us to explore a lot of important aspects of JavaFX. It's going to allow us to explore the theatrical metaphor that JavaFX uses, which includes setting a scene and then showing it on the stage. We're going to explore the various different components that you can add to a JavaFX page. We're going to take a look at the various different layouts that we can use to create a responsive design, and we're going to take a look at event handling so that we can interact with the user and respond to events that happen in our program. By the end of this, you're going to have a fun little JavaFX application that you can really, really be proud of. So by far the easiest way to get started with JavaFX is just to open up your favorite IDE. My favorite one is Eclipse. I know what you're thinking. It's a boomer IDE, but I don't care. I love it. I also know what you're thinking. You're thinking, oh, why does he have it in light mode? I know you can roast me in the comments. I apologize to all you vampires out there that like dark mode. I promise you, Eclipse, light mode, it's going to be well worth it if you want to learn JavaFX. Now, as I said, the best way to get started with JavaFX is just to go to your favorite IDE and create a basic Maven project. I'm going to skip the archetype creation. I don't need that. I just need to fill in the gav com.mcnz.javafx will be the group ID, artifact ID will be number guesser, and I don't like that depressing defeatist 001 snapshot. I'm going to call this a 1.0 release because I am bold. Now, it is going to take a minute for Eclipse just to create that basic project for us, but I'm going to go open that up, see if that POM file is ready, and sure enough, it is. So I'm going to open that up, and I might even increase the font size a bit. Okay, there we go. That's just a little bit easier for you to see right now. And I'm just going to add a dependencies section in here. Make sure that I spell it right. And there's two dependencies you need at the very, very least. The very first one is the JavaFX controls. So as you can see, I've got JavaFX controls over here, version 23. I'm going to copy that out and paste that in, and boom, there we go. We've got JavaFX controls, and then another one you'll want to have in there is the FML. What does that mean in short form? Oh, no, it's not FML, it's FXML. That's a little bit more Christian right there. But as you can see, I got the FXML, not the FML. I'm going to copy that, throw that into my POM file as well. I'm going to do a little right click, source and format, just so this looks handsome for all of us to read. Okay, that looks good. Let's see if I can fit it all on one screen just so that everybody can see it there. There we go. That's the full POM file. And if you even hover over to Maven dependencies right there, you'll see that, well, all of those Maven dependencies, JavaFX controls, graphics, base, they've all been added in. So now we are ready to start doing some coding. So I'm going to head over here. I'm going to create a brand new Java class. This is going to be my JavaFX application. So we're going to create a number guessing game. I'll call it the number guesser. I will have a main method, and there will be a super class because this is a super project that we're going to be creating. We're going to be using the JavaFX application class as the parent class. You have to use that. That gives your class all of the capabilities that make it possible for it to run as a JavaFX application. Also, there's a special method that's needed in order for a class to properly extend application. That's the start method. And by having that inherent abstract method selected, that should create us the basic class with that, boom, start method there that takes a primary stage as a parameter. Now I like to change that just to stage because I just think it's easier to type 5 letters than over 10, but you can leave it as primary stage as you want. But that is the start. That gets us going. That creates our basic JavaFX class that extends application, that has that key method in there, start, and it also has that main method as well. Now, if you know anything about Java, you know that the entry point for a Java application is that main method. But right now, the main method does nothing, which means if we run this application, it does nothing. In order to launch a JavaFX application, you have to type in application.launch. Just makes sense. I told you this JavaFX stuff was super easy. And what are we launching? We want to launch that number guesser class. So we say, let's launch that number guesser class. You've got the option to pass arguments into this launch method to maybe customize it somehow. I don't have any to pass in, but the standard practice is just to pass in any arguments that get passed into the main method. And you can see that's what I've done there to polish off that method. So now we don't have an application that will do nothing when we run the main method. We have an application that will launch the application when we run the main method. The only problem that we've got now is that, well, that start method doesn't do anything. So we're back to the start where we've got an application that will launch, but it'll still do nothing. And so getting it to do something is what we're going to do next. Okay, I'm doing just a very quick interruption here. A couple of things. The YouTube algorithm hates me for some reason right now. If you're enjoying this video, if you could like, subscribe, and even leave a comment, I would really love to hear from you and find out if you've enjoyed this. It'll also help wake up the YouTube algorithm and maybe give my channel and my videos a little bit more exposure. So I would really appreciate that. The other thing too is I got a new copy of Hibernate Made Easy coming out, the best-selling book. I've updated it for version 7 of Hibernate. So if you're into JPA, Spring Data, Spring JDBC, please sign up for my mailing list. You don't have to buy it, but I'll be raffling off some free copies for members of my newsletter. And I'll also be making chapters available through the newsletter as well. So sign up for that. There's a link in the description. And finally, I helped out with some final edits on Darcy DeClute Scrum Master Certification Guide. So if you're agile and you're working with Scrum and you're interested in getting Scrum Master certified, a lot of people have been using this book to score 100% on the Product Owner and Scrum Master exam. So it's available on Amazon. Go pick that up. I know Darcy would be very happy if you did. Okay, that's it. I'm really sorry to bother you. Let's get back into the coding. So our number guessing JavaFX game that we're going to create here is going to look like this. It's going to start off with a little prompt at the top that says guess a number between 1 and 10. There'll be a text field where we can type in a number from 1 to 10. Then there'll be a button that says guess, and then maybe underneath that another label, another place where we can display, hey, guess higher, guess lower, or way to go, you pick the number correctly. So in order to do that, we're going to need a few JavaFX components. To display a prompt, we just use something called a label. So I'll just type in var prompt label equals new label. And what will the prompt be? Just guess a number between 1 and 10. Throw an exclamation mark on there for some enthusiasm. Now, what happens after that? Well, I mentioned that there's going to be a text field where we'll throw some input. So we can say var, input field equals new text field. That looks good to me. What do we want after that? We want a button. So when they guess the number, they click the guess button. So var guess button equals new button. I think you're seeing the trend here, right? Object, name, new, object, new button. And what will the button say? The button will say, hey, guess the number. And then finally, we'll just have like a a feedback form or a feedback label. And the feedback label will just tell them whether they're going to guess higher or lower or whatever. Starting off, it's not going to say anything, so we'll just say new label and leave the constructor blank. So those are the 4 components that we're going to allow the user to interact with in our application. Now, do you see that red X right there? If you see a red X, you need to get your eyes checked because those are white X's on a red background. But the problem that we've got now, I think, is twofold. One, the application isn't recognizing var because I think this is back in the Stone Age of Java 8, and I can fix that by right-clicking on my project and saying properties, bring up that Java build path, see what version of Java we're on, Java compiler, deselect that 1.8 compliance, and let's move on to Java 21 there. So I'll click yes, I'll click apply, I'll click close, and oh boy, I've still got those errors, but at least that red squiggly line is no longer under var. The problem with label, text field button, and label again is the fact that, well, they're not imported. So I just have to right click and say source. Let's organize those imports. Control-Shift-O is what the cool kids do. I want the JavaFX button, not the Java AWT components. So I'll make sure that I'm importing all the correct ones. And boom, all of a sudden my troubles go away. Everything looks like it compiles. Now, those are just declared. They're not actually doing anything right now. And I want them to do something. At the very least, I want to be able to display these components. Now, the way that JavaFX applications work is you get a stage and you can show the stage. In fact, the stage is passed into this method, and one of the last things you do in your method when you kick things off is you say stage.show. Now, we've got a little bit of a problem here in that, well, the stage is just an empty stage. There's no scene to display. So what you do in JavaFX is you create scenes, right? So you could say var scene equals new scene, okay? And maybe the scene will be the prompt label. And maybe we want to make the scene 300 by 400 pixels in resolution. Control-Shift-O to, I don't know, get rid of those errors there. So you can create a scene. Scene has to have something on it. In this case, I'm just adding that prompt label to it. You can only add one component to a scene at a time. Now, in fact, we probably don't want to just add that prompt label. We want to add a whole bunch of things, which we'll do with a layout. But we'll get to that in just a moment. So you have a scene. You want to put that scene on the stage. So how do you do that? You say stage.set the scene. I love this metaphor. And what scene are we setting? Well, in this case, we're setting that scene that we created just a moment ago. Now, again, a scene can only have one component on it. So right now, our stage, only shows the prompt label. But we want to actually show 4 things. There's a trick to get more than one thing on a scene. Now, a scene can only take one component, but what you can do is you can add a component that contains other components. And that's where various different layouts come in. One layout that I like, which will be perfect for this application, is just a vertical layout, where all of the components just get stacked one on top of each other. So I'm going to create a new vertical box layout, VBox. I don't know, I'll do 10 pixel padding between components. And what do I want in this box? Well, I want the prompt label, and I want the input field, and I want the guess button, and I want all of this to fit on the screen. So I'm going to double click over here on my number guesser to make it go full screen. Throw in the semicolon there to make everything look good. Control-Shift-O O to organize the import. So VBox is imported. And now the scene isn't just going to be a prompt label, but the scene is going to be the prompt label on top of an input field, on top of the guest button, which is on top of the feedback label. And all of this is starting to look really, really good. Now, so what we do, we create the layout, we add the layout to that scene. We go to the stage, we set the scene, we show the stage. And something you often do as well is for the stage, you'll set a title for it. That's just the title of your application. I'll call this the number guessing game. Okay, that all looks handsome to me. I gotta have a close bracket on there. And well, now we're starting to create that layout, that look and feel for our application. Now, it would be nice to see this running, wouldn't it? But here's the problem. If I'm actually going to right click and say run as a Java application right now, this isn't going to work. And in fact, it's going to give me this annoying message that everybody runs into. We'll solve this in just a minute. But this error says the JavaFX runtime components are missing and they are required in order to run this application. You see, even though we've got all of the components added to our POM file and the dependencies have indeed been downloaded, when you run your applications, you actually have to have the JavaFX SDK installed and extracted on your computer, and you have to reference them in your run command. Now, how do you do that? Well, what you do is you head over to gluonhq.com/product/JFX, and you just search based on the JavaFX version you're using, your operating system, the architecture, and what you want to download. And I want to download the SDK. You see I got one button here that says download. When I click that button, I just get a zip file. There it is right there, OpenFX, JFX 23 SDK. I've extracted that and renamed it JavaFX SDK. I trimmed off the version number. You can see it's got a lib folder right in there with all of this JavaFX goodness. And I've actually moved it from that downloads folder. You don't want it in there. I've just moved it right onto the root of C. So you can see that lib folder is C JavaFX SDK/lib. Now, when you run your application, what you have to do is this. You have to go over to your project and say, run as Java configurations. This window will come up, and under applications, you have to go to this arguments tab, and you have to add in a VM argument. Now be careful here. It is not a program argument. It is a VM argument, and it starts off with --module path, and my module path is C JavaFX SDK/lib. And then you have to say --add modules and say JavaFX controls, JavaFX graphics, JavaFX XML, and any other modules that you want to use. You click apply, then you click run. That error disappears, and boom, all of a sudden you get your application. There's my top label, guess a number between 1 and 10. There's my text field, and that number is a little outside of the specified range. There is the guess button, and it looks like my application is doing what I asked it to do. It's creating a nice little layout with all of the required components. The only problem is I'm not handling any events. I'm not responding to any events. I'm not implementing any logic. And that is exactly what we're going to do next. So we are creating a number guessing game here. So there's a couple of things that we're going to have to add to our project to support that. First of all, we're going to need an instance variable of type int called number of tries, because we want to keep track of the number of tries. And we'll also want to have a magic number that the user is trying to guess. So I'll throw in those two instance variables, int number of tries and int magic number. And then, of course, well, we're going to have to randomly generate a random number too. So I don't know, before I start doing some of the event handling, I'll create a random number. So I'll say random equals new random. Probably have to do a Control-Shift-O in order to import that random class. And there you see it right there, java.util.random. And after I've added that random, I'll say, hey, that magic number, let's set that equal to random.next int. And I think next int starts at the base 0, so we'll want to add a 1 to it, so we get the numbers 1 through 10 instead of the numbers 0 through 9. And that sets the magic number. Now, what do we want to do? Well, what we want to do is we want to grab the number that somebody has typed into the input field when they click the guess button. So we're going to need to respond to somebody clicking on that guess button. And so to do that, we write some code that looks like this. We say guess button dot set on action. And when that action event comes, well, we're going to have a little bit of a lambda expression to run. And here's what that lambda expression is going to look like. Inside this event that gets handled, let me trim this off here a little bit. When this guess button gets handled, well, what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at what somebody has typed into that input field. And so we'll say input field dot get text. That gives us the text on the input field. Now that's a text string, and what we really want is we want that as an int, right? And so hopefully the user has typed in a number, and we should be able to say int guess is equal to integer.parseInt the input. Now, if they type some text in, we'll get a number format exception. So maybe we should be doing some exception handling here, but I'll leave that to you to polish this off a little bit later. So we've got the guess. Of course, every time they've guessed, we want to increase that number of tries. So we'll go number of tries plus plus, right? Because every time they click the button, they're doing another guess. So we want to keep track of that. And now what do we want to do? We want to just basically see if they've guessed this correctly, right? So I'm going to do something along the lines of if the guess is less than the magic number, then what are we going to do? Well, we want to update the feedback label and say guess higher. So I'll just say feedback label.set text. See how easy this is? I just want to set the text to guess higher. I don't know where that T came from, but my big fat fingers. Okay, so we'll say guess higher, and why don't we just change the text on the button? So we could say guess button dot set text, and now it'll say guess again, right? So just playing around with the properties of the objects on the page, just using the methods here. Now we could do an if then. You know, if you're one of those cool kids, an if-else statement. I'm not that cool, so I'm just going to add if after if after if. So if the guess is greater, we'll say guess lower, and then guess again, and then I guess we've got this trifecta that we have to finish off here. If the guess is the magic number, what do we do? Well, we'll say you guessed it right. You guessed it right. In quote plus number of tries plus quote tries. And boy, I do hate the type ahead. I think that looks good. You guessed it right in the correct number of tries. Maybe we'll ask the user if they want to play again. Okay, and ask them if they want to play again. And of course, if they do want to play again, we're going to have to change that magic number up. So we'll say the magic number equals random.next int 10. That should give us a brand new magic number. And also, I almost forgot, the number of tries should equal 0, right? Because they're going to be starting over again. Now, the other thing that we can do finally after we've done all of these if blocks, maybe just clear out that input field. So input field.clear. And you can see how we're just doing like heavy manipulation of these fields, but just doing it through code, implementing this whole Java GUI desktop application by writing code that describes the behavior. Now, I think this looks good. Do you see any red X's anywhere? Or should I say white X's on a red background? I certainly don't. So what I'm going to do is click Control S. I'm going to right click. I'm going to say run as a Java application. I'll wait for just a moment for this to come up. And then it says guess a number between 1 and 10. I'm going to guess 5. It says guess higher. We do see that text field getting cleared. Maybe as I do this, I'll throw some of this action content on the screen. What do we want to do next? Well, we're going to guess higher. So 7, guess again. Guess lower. I think I got a handle on this. Number 6. You guessed it right in 3 tries. Now, do we get this all reset and do we get a new number? So I'm going to say number 5. Guess lower, so it's not 6. I'll say 3. Guess higher. I'll say 4. And there we go. I guessed it right in 3 tries. So now it's resetting that. It's clearing it. And it's also resetting the number of tries each time and allowing me to guess at a new number. And there you go. That's how easy it is to get started with JavaFX. You just have to write some code, download the SDK, figure out what components you want to set on your scene. You set the scene on the stage, you show the stage, implement a little bit of logic on the actions, and boom, all of a sudden you've got yourself a fully functional JavaFX application. That's how easy it is to get started with JavaFX.